still trust? It's a great song. It's a great lyric. Not quite so sure if we're living up to it, though. So tomorrow, here in America, is Memorial Day. Now, I know for a lot of people, Memorial Day means the start of summer. First long weekend at the lake. A long weekend, which, for those of us who work secular jobs, this is basically the first long weekend we get after the Christmas holiday. So I know a lot of my coworkers have been looking forward to this. My company just started summer hours this week, so we actually get a 3.5-day weekend. Woohoo! And don't get me wrong, I appreciate that. I'm grateful for it. I like getting paid to not go to work, I have to admit. But unfortunately, I think in our excitement over the long weekend and our excitement over summer and the theoretically slower pace of life that comes during the summer, unfortunately, we have gotten away from what this day actually means. Memorial Day began with a proclamation on the 5th of May in the year 1868 by General John Logan, who at the time was the national commander of the Grand Army of the Republic, as a special remembrance of those who were lost during the Civil War. Now, he was not the first person to do this. Bless their hearts, those steel magnolias, the Southern ladies, had been decorating graves for quite some time before this. One of my favorite books that's been made into a movie is Gone with the Wind. And there's a scene in that movie where one of the ladies is thanking Rhett Butler for his donation to the Association for the Beautification of the Graves of the Glorious Dead. These women were serious about remembering those that they had lost in this horrific war. So this general, this was not a new idea, this was not his idea. He just made it official with his proclamation. So on May 30th of that year, 1868, flowers were placed on the graves of Union and Confederate soldiers at Arlington National Cemetery. Now, a lot of us grew up knowing this as Decoration Day, not Memorial Day. I admit, when I first started hearing Memorial Day in relation to Decoration Day, I was a little confused. I thought they were two totally different things. And then I finally realized, oh no, it's all the same. But Decoration Day or Memorial Day was recognized by all of the northern states by 1890. But up until World War I, it was still in commemoration of those we lost during the Civil War. But after World War I, the holiday was changed from honoring just those who died in the Civil War to honoring Americans who died fighting in any war on behalf of our nation. And it is now celebrated in almost every state on the last Monday of May. So what's the big deal? Other than the fact that it's the unofficial start of summer and it's, this great 3-day weekend thanks to the federal government who determined it should be the last Monday in May, so government employees could have a 3-day weekend. So what? Why is it important to remember the people who have died fighting for our country? Well, it's because of their bravery and their self-sacrifice and the bravery and sacrifice of their families that we can meet here this morning and worship as we see fit without worrying about somebody coming to arrest us or harm us because of our beliefs. Memorials, whether it's a day set aside or a marker that we place, are extremely important. They serve to remind us. They help us look back and gain strength. They help us keep alive the memory of people and events that matter, that made a difference. And And memorials are ordained by God. They are scriptural. God knew his people would need reminders of his work and of his hand in their lives, so he actually commanded several memorials. In fact, in the King James Version, the word memorial is used 32 times in 31 verses. Now, one of my personal favorite memorials that God commanded is found in Joshua chapter 4. So if you have your scriptures with you this morning, and I hope you do, turn to Joshua chapter 4. But before I read our scripture for this morning, let me give you a little background here. God has brought the children of Egypt, or the children of Israel rather, out of Egypt. There was the great parting of the Red Sea so that the Israelites could cross. Moses has then led the children of Israel for 40 years, wandering around and around and around in the desert. Moses messed up. God told him to speak to the rock to draw forth the water. Moses struck the rock. God still provided the water, but he told Moses, because you didn't do what I said, you will not cross into the promised land. So, by the time we get into the book of Joshua, Moses has gone to be with God. And Joshua has been raised up as Moses' successor. And God tells Joshua, he says, I am going to show the children of Israel that I am with you just like I was with Moses. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to take the children of Israel across the Jordan River. And you're going to start taking possession of the land that I said that I would give to you. Now here's the tricky thing. At this time of year, the Jordan River is at flood tide. It's overflowing its banks because it's harvest season. So Joshua is asking the children of Israel, men and women, children, the elderly, the infirm, we're just going to take a little stroll through the river. Not exactly. This water was high. It was rushing. It would have been scary to even try to attempt to walk across this river. So what does God do? Just as he did with Moses, when they were leaving Egypt, God tells Joshua, don't worry about it. I'm going to part the waters. He says, you command the Levitical priests to carry the Ark of the Covenant ahead of the people. And as soon as their sandals hit the water, he parted the waters. It says in Scripture, the waters stood up in a heap, and the priests walked into the middle of the riverbed on dry ground. Now think about that for a minute. I'm not saying that God parted the waters and they all hung out for a couple hours waiting for the sun to do its thing. God parted the waters and the ground was immediately dry. And the priests carried the Ark of the Lord's Covenant out into the middle of the Jordan riverbed. And they stood there while the millions of the children of Israel crossed on dry land. I want you to get that. Because the power that that shows is amazing. And that is the power of the God that we serve. Dry ground. See, God told Joshua, I'm going to show that I'm with you just like I was with Moses. Moses was there for the parting of the Red Sea. Joshua was there for the parting of the Jordan River. God knew the people would need reminders about this, that they would need to be able to look back at this moment to remember God's strength and his care for his people. So let's look at what God told Joshua to do in Joshua chapter 4, the first 9 verses. After the entire nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord spoke to Joshua. Choose 12 men from the people, 1 man for each tribe, and command them. Take 12 stones from this place in the middle of the Jordan where the priests are standing, Carry them with you and set them down at the place where you spend the night." So Joshua summoned the 12 men he had selected from the Israelites, one man for each tribe, and said to them, "Go across to the ark of the Lord your God in the middle of the Jordan. Each of you lift a stone onto his shoulder, one for each of the Israelite tribes, so that this will be a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask you, 'What do those stones mean to you?' you should tell them, 'The water of the Jordan was cut off in front of the ark of the Lord's covenant. When it crossed the Jordan's water was cut off. Therefore, these stones will always be a memorial for the Israelites." Verse 8, the Israelites did just as Joshua had commanded them. The 12 men took stones from the middle of the Jordan, one for each of the Israelite tribes, just as the Lord had told Joshua. They carried them to the camp and set them down there. Joshua also set up 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan, where the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant were standing. The stones are still there today. Oh, brothers and sisters, think about that. Now I want you to get this picture in your head. We're not talking stones. We're not talking rocks. Okay, we're talking stones. These men had to pick them up and put them on their shoulders to carry them out of the Jordan River into the camp. So when they put these 12 stones together, I don't imagine that it was a pile about like this. I imagine that it's a pile about like this. 12 stones so large they had to be carried on a man's shoulders. Why? So that when the children and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren and the great-great-grandchildren saw this heap of stones, and they turned to the adults and they said, "What does this mean? Why is this here?" They could be told. They could be reminded. The adults could share with the children. The waters of the Jordan were cut off in front of the Ark of the Lord's covenant. And Scripture tells us in verse 9, those stones are still there today. That is amazing. God thought that this event was important enough to remember that He commanded